Howdy, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Dusty Trails and Tall Tales podcast, where we keep the spirit of the Western alive by talking with writers, filmmakers, and storytellers who bring the frontier to life. Today, we're joined by Charles Ray, a man of many talents, among which he's a prolific Western author. From his inspiration of Bass Reeves to his best-selling Caleb Johnson Mountain Man series, Charles has carved out a unique place in the modern Western landscape. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about your background and what drew you to writing westerns.
Well, background. I grew up in a wide spot in the road in Texas, East Texas, back in the 40s and 50s, and was always interested in writing. Even as a kid, I actually won a national short story writing contest when I was 13.
Wow.
Uh, and when I left high school, I had this. I had this. My mother said insane desire to see the world, so I joined the army and spent 20 years sort of bumming around in uniform all over the place, from Asia to Europe to Latin America. And along the way, I actually did a lot of writing for newspapers and magazines. In the 70s, I actually worked for a couple of newspapers in North Carolina for about 3 years, doing various things, writing. I was an editorial cartoonist, did feature writing and all kinds of theater reviews, you name it. And the Western writing actually grew out of my love of history. I was doing historical fiction, and there was a period when the organization that I was running, I had a lot of younger employees who actually were ignorant of American history. I mean, they just totally didn't know diddly. They didn't even understand the warped history because they were too young to have grown up watching westerns on TV like some of us.
Yeah.
And so I started writing these short books of historical fiction, focusing a lot on the Buffalo Soldiers, the Ninth and 10th Cavalry. And I came to the attention of a couple of Western publishers who asked if I would convert a couple of my historical fiction books into traditional Western. Because I focused a lot on the history of it rather than on the adventure and the shoot 'em ups and all this. And I did that. They didn't do too poorly, and then uh, Nick Wales, who's the publicist and brains behind DSP, reached out to me and basically did a lot of arm twisting and cajoling, and basically convinced me that my historical fiction would be better to as westerns, as stories. You focus on storytelling and entertaining people, and reach a larger audience. I had never really thought about writing westerns. I wrote about 13 or 14 books about the Buffalo Soldiers, which, believe it, turned out to be westerns, not historical fiction. And I found that I enjoyed it because I grew up in that part of the country. I grew up in Texas. I've lived in Oklahoma. I've lived in Arizona. I've been all over New Mexico. All of the old, Tombstone and places like that. I've actually been in. Never really thought much about it until I wrote the first of the Caleb Johnson books, which were done mostly on a whim. I thought I'd try my hand at writing about a mountain man, but typical of me, I don't follow the standard procedure. I had to come up with my own little plot, and surprised me more than anyone else, I think, when people actually took to Caleb Johnson, and I found that I enjoyed writing it, and so I quit denying that I was a Western author and just admitted it. I'm a reincarnation of a Louis L'Amour clone from the 50s.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say a reincarnation of the mountain man.
Probably that too. I mean, I think a lot of the traits of the mountain men, this sort of individual, more comfortable with your own company than with crowds of people, enjoy sort of being out in the back and beyond,
Yeah,
communing with nature. I've always been that way, so I guess in a way, maybe I am a reincarnated mountain man.
I think all of us have a little bit of mountain man in us.
Yeah, but the difference though is the true. We all have the desire, I think, for adventure, but the true mountain man just says the hell with it. He packs a bag and goes and does it.
Yeah. Well, when did you first learn about Bass Reeves, and what drew you to writing about him?
Well, when I was doing the research for one of the uh, Buffalo Soldier books, I came across references to Bass Reeves. I had never heard the name before that, and the mentions intrigued me. So I dug deeper, and when I learned more about him, I realized that for all of being a history wonk and for thinking that I had actually studied American history very well, I was shocked to find out that there was this aspect of it. Here's a person who lived and worked less than 200 miles from where I grew up, and I had never heard the name before. And so I spent better part of a year basically digging out every internet reference that I could find, cross-referencing few archives I managed to get into, and that I put together a. It was actually about a 50,000 word fictionalized account of his life. And it was fictionalized because since he was not literate in English, he couldn't write about himself. And I had to rely on old newspaper reports and what others said about him. But I wrote this, it was called Frontier Justice, the story of Bass Reeves, Deputy U.S. Marshal. And it hit a chord. I mean, people started buying it. That was, I think I published that book back in 2010. And here we are in 2025, and it still sells about 4 or 5 copies a month. I mean,
Well,
that's a heck of a shelf life for a book. Most books don't last longer than 2 or 3 years, and that book and the following stories that I've written about him continue to sell at a, they're not breaking any records, but the people are still buying them and reading them. I still occasionally get feedback from readers who find that they learn something from it and enjoy it.
yeah. Well, then what inspired you to come up with the character of Caleb Johnson in your Mountain Man series?
Well, okay. Well, as I said, when I started doing the historical fiction and I'm in doing the research, I also ran across references to people like Jim Beckworth, who was one of the African American mountain men. And I don't know. I think I was sitting around one day proofreading one of my manuscripts, and I thought to myself, I should write a mountain man book, but I didn't want to write. I was a fan of Grizzly Adams. I don't know if you're familiar with that old TV show.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I've seen
I,
some pictures from it. I've never watched it.
well, I don't even think it's in syndication, but I used to watch every episode, and so I thought, okay, that's been done. I was looking for a hook, something different, and I sat down noodling with one of my journals and writing possible plots. And I came up with African American mountain man. At the end of the fur trade, he's trying to readjust to life not in the hills trapping. And he encounters a former Confederate cavalry officer and then let them go from there, see where that goes, having, black, white,
Yeah,
and it just sort of wrote itself. I mean, as I started having the two characters interact in scenes, something else would come up and it wound up being a fairly popular book. And when Nick uh, from DSP uh, recruited me to be one of DSP's authors, he suggested that I convert that into a series. And so I took the book that I wrote, which very, very creative title. I just call it Mountain Myth. So I took it where that book ended. I started the series from him. He in the end of the first book, he actually was in Colorado. He left Colorado with the former Confederate, and they went to Oregon, where he helped this guy set up a ranch. And I ended it there with him in Oregon. And so in the first book of the series, I had him come back to Colorado, which actually makes for more interesting stories because Colorado, if you read about the mountain men and the fur trade, Colorado played a central role in the American fur trade, and so having a mountain man, having him in Colorado, offered up a lot more possibilities for stories, and having him moving away from, he's no longer in the fur trade, so I have to find what's he going to do. So I had to work out, how does a former mountain man who spent his life trapping make a living, and did a lot more backstory of his history, where he came from. And that's how Caleb was born. He just sort of evolved out of that first wild idea I had, and I keep I, the the audience keeps asking for more. I think I'm up at how many? 55 or 56 in that series now.
Wow. How many different series do you write for DSP?
Let's see. There's Caleb Johnson. Six.
Wow. Which one's your favorite to write?
Well, actually, Caleb Johnson was my favorite. I just started a new series about a country lawyer because, I'm always looking for something different. Let's give readers some, and so I came up with this Eustace Tucker Country Lawyer series. I've done two of those, which are beginning to catch on, and I'm Eustace and Caleb are running pretty neck and neck in terms of my favorite, because they both open the possibility to do some really interesting and unique things with the Western genre, that other than just the shoot 'em out, the cattle drive, that's been overdone. I try to come up with some new twists. I did, for example, very short-lived series of a guy who'd been a Civil War veteran, and when he went back home, he was suffering from what we now call PTSD.
Yeah.
Of course, they didn't even have a name for it back then, and without even using the term post-traumatic stress, I did a series that they were not unpopular. They didn't burn any barns, but they were okay. Of how a combat veteran who didn't become an outlaw like a lot of Civil War veterans did, adjusted to life back in peacetime. And that was sort of fun for a while. I did about 6 or 8 of those before I moved on to something else.
Well, what's your writing process like? Do you outline everything, or do you just?
Nope. Nope. I tried that once, and it got messy because the way I write, I first create the character. Because to me, I think there's stories, they're about people, so they're character driven. I try and flesh the character out. Then I figure the period that character lives in, and I come up with various scenarios. This character who is this type person, who does this type work, who's living here, what are some of the adventures they would come up in? And I keep about 10 journals where I list things, and then what I do is, after I've got the character and some general themes, then I come up with a title, because I think the title helps me to focus. And for each story, I will decide when it happens, where it happens, and generally two things: the starting incident or event, and something sort of roughly where I want the character to end up. Then I just start writing.
Yeah. That's
And
pretty similar to how I write. I have the ending in mind and the title, and then I'll just start somewhere and see what happens.
yeah, I mean, I tried outlining, chapter by chapter, and the problem was that I would get into a chapter and the characters would start doing something interesting that I hadn't outlined.
Yeah,
And so then I'd have to go back to the outline and rewrite. I'd do my outlines in pencil because if I did it in pen, you couldn't read it. I'd be scratching. And then I just decided this is not working for me. I have a title, I have a character, I have a place, and I have a kickoff event. Now let's see what they do, and off I go.
yeah. How much do you write in a day? Do you have like a set word count you write
Yeah,
toward, or
I work for an editor, a newspaper editor back in the '70s, who told me that if you want to be a writer, you have to, like an athlete who practices, you have to write every day. And his thing was write 1,000 words a day. Well, I've always been something of an overachiever. I figured if writing 1,000 words a day worked, I'll shoot for 2,000, so it'll work better. And I try to write at least about 2 to 3,000 words a day every day.
oh, that's pretty amazing.
Well, I touch type, so it's not the heroic
Uh,
achievement that it might sound. I mean, I type 60 words a minute. So if you really think about it, if you type 60 words a minute, you can type 2,000 words in not that many hours. I mean,
yeah,
and
two or
I'm
three
on.
hours, probably.
Say again.
2 or 3 hours, probably.
Yeah, I mean that's
Something.
literally if you put yourself at the keyboard for about 3 hours, you can easily do 2 to 3,000 words, and that's a chapter.
Yeah,
So you're looking at 15 to 20 days per book, and I usually am working on two at a time. So I work on one until I reach a point where I'm a little tired of this, so I move over to the other. I
yeah.
also write a newspaper column for a newspaper in the Philippines, and so I have that and other
Oh,
things. And I teach 3 graduate courses, so I have things to move my mind to when the writing starts to feel a little stale, and that way I don't have to worry about writer's block.
yeah. Well, let's talk about another of your series, The Adventures of Marshall Boone Collins.
Ah, yes, the town marshal.
Yeah.
I don't even remember where he came from. I just remember one day sitting down thinking, I need a new character. And it happened when I was, before I retired from government service, I worked at the Pentagon for 3 years. And my job involved working with the Air Force, Army, and Navy search and rescue people. So I went out on a lot of their exercises, and one of the places they used to exercise was this old deserted mining town in New Mexico, Playa. Beautiful, rough country. I mean, it looks like scenes from a John Ford Western out there. And I
Oh,
happened to have that on my mind as I was thinking about this, and I thought, okay, that now I know where I want it to take place. I came up with the town Plata instead of Playa, and it just noodling ideas and scribbling things down. Eventually, I thought, okay, make him the town lawman, and had to come up with a name. And I keep a book of potential Western names, first names, family names, and I mix and match.
yeah,
And Boone Collins, the town marshal, was born. And he's a loner, a widower who was from Texas who moved out to New Mexico when his wife died, um, and got roped into being the marshal, the town lawman in this little town. And I don't know where I'm on. I think I'm probably at book 8 or 10 on him now.
yeah. Well, how do you how does this different than your Mountain Man series? I mean, which one do you think is more successful?
Well, the Mountain Man series, by a long stretch, is the most successful of my series. This one is beginning to pick up. I don't. It's it's doing okay. So it's not one that I've gotten bored with, and it's not one that readers are ignoring. I would say that the Mountain Man series, the Bass Reeves series, this one, and then I do J.D. Pettit, Texas Ranger. Those are probably the four top ones right now. The Country Lawyer series is too new to really judge. It's not doing poorly. In fact, the second one, I just finished the second one a few months ago, and it's already starting to take off on Amazon. So yeah, I mean they're all my. I'll put it this way: I'm like a father with a lot of kids. Some of the
Yeah.
kids are a little brighter than others. Some are more athletic than others, but I love them all.
We have a question from Mike here. I'm bringing it up on the screen. He wants to know how much of you is in the character Caleb Johnson.
Probably, I would say Caleb is maybe 30% me and 70% a figment of my sometimes vodka soaked imagination.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, as I think any writer will say, any character that you write, there is some of you in that character.
Yeah.
But in order to write a good story, especially after if you're doing a series, you can't be all you because it's just you know your life and your experiences are totally different from what the character is going to be going through. But yeah, I think at the core there's about 30% of me and Caleb Johnson. I won't
That's
tell you
cool.
what 30% because that might spoil it for people.
Yeah. Well, one of the characters in the Caleb series is his wife, Flora. How did her character develop?
Well, when she actually started with the first of the series. She was not in the original Mountain Man book, but when I had him coming back from Oregon to Colorado, and I was thinking that unless I'm going to have this guy living as a hermit, there has to be some counterbalance. I mean, he has to have a life beyond trapping, fur trapping, and there were some scenes in the original book where he and his Confederate friend spent some time with the Shoshone on the border between Colorado and Utah, and I thought, okay, that I can see. It started having a thought in my mind. This would be a perfect sort of foil to Caleb, and I created uh, her Shoshone name is Springflower. I created her and had him meet her on his way back to Colorado, fall in love with her because he decided to winter over with the Shoshone, and being put in close quarters with someone when you're snowed in can lead to either antagonism or close association. Had them get married, and then back to his hometown of Bear Creek. Um, and she's actually become almost a main character at times. I gave her a personality all of her own, very independent, learned English through Mormon missionaries, and very stubborn young woman who has a mind of her own. And having him, who's lived alone for his entire life since adulthood, adjusting to having a wife who actually believes in running the house. Created some really interesting scenes in some of the books, and the two of them have sort of grown up together.
Yeah. How do you keep fresh ideas in a series that's been going for that long? How many more stories do you envision?
That's a hard one to say. I mean, I actually wondered that when I was probably around the 20th book in the series, But then some other ideas came up, and uh, then Nick had me do take that character and do a collaboration with another author, and that gave me a whole set of new ideas. And in my little book of ideas, where I write down possible themes, I still have about 3 pages of possible adventures that Caleb can get up to. So I'm not ready to I'm not ready to sign him off yet. I'm not sure when that one's going to end. There's just too many possibilities for a character like that. If you think about the average Western, I mean, the shoot 'em ups, the cattle drive, the bank robbery. But if you have a character that's not an outlaw, he's not a lawman. But he is a very hidebound, character driven person who likes to help people. There are a lot more stories. I mean, there are a lot more adventures he can get involved in.
You ever struggle like switching between them, between your series, or it just easy for you to do?
Well, the more you do it, the easier it is. I will confess that I have to be very careful, especially because I'm usually working on two at the same time. Not so much with the main characters, but with secondary characters, I have to watch very carefully that I don't slip a supporting character in one story inadvertently into another. But I use my technique. Even though a lot of people will advise against editing as you write, I usually go back and edit chapter by chapter to check things like, am I, did I inadvertently change a character's name midway through, or is this guy who he's talking to now the guy who was actually in the other book? Uh, Not sure that I haven't actually made that mistake once or twice, but basically, that's where the mechanics come in. I try to do a good job of editing, and I write. I keep a no, what I don't plot, but I keep a character list. So when I'm working on a story, or I'm working on two stories, I have my little notebook, and I have the
Yeah,
two stories, and I have all the characters under the story, so that as I'm writing, I sort of glance down at my notebook to make sure. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, he's in this one, and I'm good. It's just just sort of tricks you learn. It
yeah,
it so far I've been fairly good at keeping them separate. I've had a couple of times where I really bombed and put the wrong character in a book, and no one caught it. And then some sharp-eyed reader sends me an email. Uh, but that's it's part of the fun of the writing business.
yeah. What are some of the most important lessons you've learned about storytelling over the years?
That you always, that you write not for yourself, but you try and envision your reader, and that you write for the reader. That the a good story although, and I like history and I like to make my stories historically accurate, a good story is more important than being absolutely 100% accurate in history. Although you shouldn't warp it too much, but the idea, the goal of a writer, unless you're writing self-help books, is to entertain.
Yeah,
And that's something that you should never forget as you're writing. You're not writing to, massage your ego, or to, look like some kind of magician. You're writing for a person who's going to put down good money for your book, and who deserves to be entertained for whatever length of time it takes them to write it. That's what I have learned over the years, is that I don't write only for myself. I write for the reader.
uh, well, you've also written a book on how to write modern westerns, and it's a big help to me over my career because I've read it a few times.
Yeah.
What uh, what inspired you to write that?
I used to do. I have a couple of blogs. But I had a blog for a while that was a book review. I mean, basically, I did book reviews, and I
Mm,
also do. I'm a first reader for an Australian publisher. I do the first read of all of the American authors who submit books to this publisher. And I noticed that a lot of people who had really good story ideas were making some rookie mistakes over and over, and it's driving editors crazy. You know, things like head hopping, where you have a scene with two characters, and you sort of switching the points of view back and forth in the scene, which can
mhm,
get very confusing to a reader. And I was just jotting down some ideas. I also taught a class on official writing for students, college seniors at a local college for 8 years. And I had written a little pamphlet for my students on writing tips. You know, here's how to do good government writing.
yeah,
And I just thought, I've seen a lot of books on writing and on writing westerns, but nothing on the mechanics of it. You know, it's one thing to talk about creating characters and all this, but what about the mechanics of writing a western that can help an author write a western that actually tells a good story in a logical, intelligent way? And I discussed it with Nick, and he agreed, and so I did that. And that was, it was sort of a side project that Nick and I discussed, and I put it together, hopefully to help other people who wanted to write westerns
yeah,
do have the success that I've been fortunate enough to have. And I find it useful to read my own advice sometimes. You know, when I'm right, I actually I do. I refer to that book as sort of a guide. Every now and then I'll flip through and read a chapter just to remind myself of some of the mechanics. Because
yeah,
I find that you can get so involved in the art part of the storytelling that you forget that without the mechanics, your art doesn't go over well. You know, it's like being a
yeah,
painter. You can have a great picture in your mind, but you have to know how to mix paint and stretch canvas and, do all that to actually transform that vision in your mind into something that can hang on a gallery wall.
yeah. I think the biggest thing that I learned the first time I read it was overuse of exclamation marks, and
Oh
so
yeah, yes, yes. That's something that, and I think every writer, I know I do. I have to watch myself. I've set myself a quota that no more than three exclamation points per book.
yeah,
Because again, there's the old adage in writing: show, not tell. An
hmm,
exclamation point is telling people that this is an excited person, and it's after a while it gets too many exclamation points, and you're no longer excited. That just becomes
yeah,
another punctuation mark. So I that goes in there, and the same thing goes for using speech tags. The best is said or asked.
hmm,
Occasionally you can throw another one in, but when people use speech tags like, and you can't do that, he whistled.
yeah,
I dare you to try and whistle those words.
yeah. I
But
try to
anyway,
use it to where when I write, I don't use tags at all. I'll have the character doing something like after the dialogue.
that works too. I mean, that's actually, if you could do it without even using a speech tag, it actually flows better. I have actually done that. I've written a whole chapter without a speech tag, but with speech, where they
Yeah,
say something and then they do something that sort of supplements or adds to what they said, and you go, and that's a perfectly valid way to do it.
Yeah.
But you shouldn't have them whistling or you can't do that. He snorted.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just. But
Well, what are some of your influences as far as your writing, your favorite writers you read growing up and the like?
well, I have a long list of favorite writers. Going back to, I think the first novel that I read when I was about 7 or 8 was by Edgar Rice Burroughs, and I still, even though his books are corny as all get out, I still like reading his stuff. Um, Louis L'Amour was one of my favorite authors growing up, and then as a young adult, I remember reading Elmore Leonard, Sue Grafton.
Yeah.
I mean, my list of favorite authors. I also like Edgar Allan Poe. I mean, I just that to me, Poe and is just he's still the quintessential short novel writer who could write a story that would grab you by the nose with the first word and not let go until the end.
Yeah.
I like a lot of writers. I don't have a single favorite writer, and I think all of the writers that I've read have in some way influenced the way I write. I try to find my own voice, write it my way, but you can't help. Ernest Hemingway, for example, his economical use of words, I find influences a lot of what I write, or maybe the way I write, not so much what I write. But I think every writer that I have ever read, though, has influenced me to a certain degree.
Yeah. Yeah. Louis L'Amour is a big influence on me, especially growing up. His
Yeah,
his work when I saw it was really the first experience I had with westerns, and then I got into like the movies
yeah,
and stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah. He was the king of the Western genre when I was growing up. I mean, Louis L'Amour. Back when you could buy paperbacks for a quarter,
Yeah.
and I had a collection of Edgar Rice Burroughs, Louis L'Amour, Larry McMurtry. When he came along, I had a lot of his books. And yeah, he Louis L'Amour basically, I think, was really, I'd say, probably created the modern Western genre. I mean,
Yeah.
he wasn't the first, but he was certainly the one who put an indelible stamp on Westerns.
Yeah. He sort of bridged the gap from the early 19th century to the modern age.
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, 20th century.
Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. What do you think defines a truly great western?
Oh, wow. I think a really good Western is a book that first tells a good story, gives someone something to think about and to see the Western frontier in a different way. I think a lot of people have some mythical understandings of the frontier based on. I mean, if you think about a lot of the TV shows and movies of the 50s and 60s when westerns were big, really painted a slightly inaccurate picture of the West, and a really great western story, I think, tells a good story that entertains, at the same time leaves the reader with a fuller, more nuanced, and accurate understanding of what the frontier was really like.
Yeah. Why do you think readers are still drawn to westerns today?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I maybe it's the idea, and one of the sort of key themes in westerns is the individual prevailing over the environment, or over adversity, and the westerns still, they're about heroic behavior, the sort of knights of the 19th century. And I think stories of knights slaying dragons impress people. And the cowboy, the town marshal, these were the knights errant of the 19th century America. And I think a lot of people see themselves, or this idealized vision of themselves, in these old Western heroes who won out over nature, won out over a lot of hardships. And basically, if you think about it, from the time the settlers broke out of these crowded confines of the English settlements on the eastern seaboard, and started moving west into what to them was an unknown land, uh, it sort of defined who I think we are as a country. And what I think the modern westerns, and what I hope to do with mine, is to show that the good side of that. I mean, the things about this country that are really good grew out of that experience, and we need to tell those stories, rather than the way they've been told. A lot of times, it leaves a lot of people out of the narrative, and I try in my stories to bring them back in, and tell the same story, but with a fuller cast of characters, which to me defines the true America, rather than some warped vision that some people might have.
Yeah. Well, what's your favorite Western movie?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't really have a favorite. I mean, I have a few that I could list as I don't ever want to see that one again. But the ones I like, I mean, I like. I, I have issues with John Wayne, and not because of his westerns. I have issues with John Wayne. You see the movie Green Beret?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I have issues with John Wayne because of what he did in that movie.
Uh,
They played with the history of the Vietnam War in ways that just totally drive me nuts. But one
yeah,
of my favorite movies that he was in was True Grit.
yeah,
I just, I really like that. Another movie, and he was in this one, although he didn't have a as big a role. The Alamo was to me a fairly, it was a good movie. I mean, and having grown up in that part of the country, uh, I enjoyed that. Those are about. If I had to list favorites, those would probably be my two favorites. But then all the other good ones I've seen are good too.
yeah. What'd you think about Jeremiah Johnson since you write Mountain Man?
Well, that's not that one's not bad. Not
Yeah,
bad. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I found out that was Louis L'Amour's favorite movie. I was speaking to his
Really?
son. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, no, that one was good. I'm trying. My problem is I have the attention span of a fruit fly. My memory. I mean, I can remember scenes from movies and not remember the title.
yeah,
So I mean, there are several Western movies that when they come on streaming, I watch, and then after I've watched it and I realize, hey, I enjoy that, and a week later I can't remember the title again.
Well, what advice would you give to new writers trying to break into the Western genre today?
Do your research, master the technical skills of things like how to write good dialogue, how to write good description. and persevere. Just if you're meant to be a writer of westerns, and if it's that important to you, then stick to it. Because my path to becoming a writer of westerns was long and winding. I tried mysteries, still occasionally pen a mystery. I did historical stuff. I do nonfiction, but when I finally had someone like Nick Wales twist my arm and push me to where I actually belong, I found that I actually enjoy writing westerns more than I mean, I enjoy the other writing too, but I really enjoy writing westerns. If it's something that you enjoy doing, research and then do it. Just try it. The first few things you do are going to be total schlock. That's fine. First drafts are always lousy, but keep
Yeah,
at it. And if you want it badly enough, you'll get it. You'll get there.
yeah. Well, what can fans expect from you next? More Caleb Johnson or something new?
No, I think I'm going to stick to the 6 series that I'm doing now. I'm in the process now, about 30% done with a new Boone Collins town marshal story. I keep a list and I go down my list. I just did Caleb and Bass Reeves over the last month and a half. I'm working on Boone Collins now. And then my next after him will be my Texas Ranger J.D. Pettit. And I did a Eustace Tucker country lawyer. Then I have my vigilante Jacob Blade, and I do a bounty hunter one, Rusty Rhodes, and
Yeah,
I'll just keep going. And then when I reach the bottom of the list, I go back to the top and I start a new one and go down.
yeah. Well, what's the best place for our viewers to find your work or contact you on social media?
I'm all over social media on checking my books. I have a website. It's at charlesray-author.com, where I have all of my books. I mean, they're broken down. I have, westerns, mysteries, nonfiction, whatever. But they're there. You go to that website, you'll find. I also have an Amazon author page, which if you go to Amazon and type in my name, should come up. Um, and on social media, I am on LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, Twitter, and I have a Substack webpage. That's a new one where I actually I post some of my writing stuff, but I mostly do political commentary on Substack.
Uh,
And so I'm on Pinterest and Instagram.
Sounds like you're all over the place.
Hey, if you want your work to be known, you have to be. You
Yeah,
literally, I mean, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised where potential readers can be found. I was in international relations and intelligence for a long time when I worked in government, and I still occasionally get asked to do speeches or presentations to groups on foreign affairs and diplomacy. And believe it or not, I have actually sold westerns at events like this. I was at one not too long ago. I was speaking to a group of military people who were getting ready to go overseas. I was briefing them on what they were, going into, and two of them came up with my westerns, asking for signatures, asking for autographs.
wow.
So it's social media, and we're finding this out. DSP, by the way, is finding this out. Is that social media is actually more effective in advertising books and other artistic products than buying ads in newspapers or on TV, because more people are actually getting their news and information from social media than are getting it from TV and newspapers and magazines.
What do you think publishers like Dusty Saddles have done to help revive the popularity of westerns?
Well, I mean, what Dusty Saddle has done is basically focus on getting good stories out to the maximum number of people. The pricing model is such that I think a lot of the mainstream publishers overcharge for books, especially electronic books. I mean, ebooks. There is no justification in the world for an ebook costing as much as a paperback.
I know.
And we recognize that at DSP, and the ebooks are, they might seem underpriced, but the fact is that being set at that price level, it attracts some people will buy a book just because, oh, it looks cheap, and then they like it, and they go in, and some of those then become paperback or hardbound buyers. Uh, we've also, and DSP has also recognized that to to really get the word out about the genre to the maximum number of people is you have to be on social media,
Yeah,
which is, and we are the only Western publisher that is really big on social media. The others, you seldom see or hear anything from them. That's one of the things that the SB has done, and the other is just basically encouraging writers to push the edge of the envelope and to experiment and to try new things. And some haven't worked, but each time we try something, we learn something new, and that gives us the energy and the motivation to try something else. So, and that's what DSP is all about.
yeah. What do you hope readers take away from your work?
An appreciation for the diversity and magnificence of the whole American experiment of people having the courage to venture into the unknown and make a life for themselves. And that while it was sometimes violent and definitely always challenging, the settlement of the American West was not trivial, nor was it as one dimensional as sometimes the media, the popular media, movies, and TV paint it. It was a very, very complex undertaking that involved a lot of people who learned to live together, sometimes after fighting each other in ways that we in the modern world could well emulate. That's sort of the philosophical takeaway.
Yeah,
The real takeaway is I hope they enjoy the heck out of the books when they read them. I mean,
yeah,
literally, I hope that they can suspend disbelief for a couple of hours and ride along with the characters and have the adventures they're having and enjoy it.
yeah. Well, Charles, thank you for joining us tonight. I've enjoyed speaking with you, and it's been a privilege and an honor.
Well, it's been a pleasure and an honor on my part, and I really appreciate you having a format or a venue like this where we can talk to potential readers, and wish you the
Yeah.
best of luck in what you're doing.
No, thank you. Look forward to your next story. I'm sure it's going to be a bestseller.
Well, I hope.
We'll see you next time.
All
Thanks for
right.
watching.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.